Good morning, guys. This is Uche, sneaker principal. It is sometime around 5:45 in the morning. It's I believe Wednesday, and it's beautiful. I'm here in Five Island Park in New Rochelle, and I just love coming here because just being in nature and by the water in the middle of a city is always a blessing. Because too often we just kind of get stuck in our in our spaces, in our concrete jungle spaces, and not really tapping into who we are as far as just natural beings. This morning, I want to talk to you um, a little bit about myself, and this is inspired by one of my subscribers, Muhammad Ali. I love the name, and in not so many words, he said, "I want to hear more about you, your story, your journey. You create a lot of content that's helpful. It's helpful for a lot of people, but also for a lot of people, it's a little redundant. So we want to hear about you, Uche." And I thought about that. I read this comment yesterday, and it really impacted me because too often in the world we present the a forward-facing identity um, that is so much better than our history. And a lot of my history has to do with why I do what I do right now. I am not perfect by any means, but I am trauma informed. So I'll say that again. I am trauma informed. A lot of things that I do is as a result of the trauma that I have dealt with, lived with, and and has put me in a place where I'm inspired to work with children and young people. My earliest memories as a child was one of physical violence. It wasn't physical violence because I was amongst um, like gangs and shootings and anything like that or drugs. Nothing like that. I am a product of trauma, and the trauma that I'm a product of is the trauma of someone else. And this is something I've been peeling back over the past few years. You know, um, my father was someone who went through a lot, and because he wasn't well parented and didn't have the tools, he raised me and my brothers and sisters in a way um, that was trauma saturated. If I'm trying to find the right words, and pardon me, I'm not a psychologist. I don't claim to, or a sociologist, and I don't claim to be one. But my earliest memories was one of fear, um, and and it's something that stayed with me throughout my growing up. I remember when I was about that's about 3 or 4. Uh, I I was put in the hospital. I was put in the hospital. Um, I had a concussion, I believe, because when you get kicked in the head and you go unconscious, that's not a good thing for a 3 or 4 year old. And then I've heard stories about a broken arm, which I'm not even sure which arm it is, but I guess I was way too young to remember that. And a lot of this had to do with just my father's rage and anger and him not being able to really make sense of the world. And somebody might say, you know what, that's unexcusable. That's a grown man. What is he doing? Put his hands on a child. But, you know, I've come to understand something about him that a lot of people on the planet could connect to, especially those of us who are not in America or at least have not lived in a war torn country. My father was a teenage soldier. Let me take that back. He was a child soldier. He was a teenager when he was forced to fight in the Biafran War in Nigeria, and I could only imagine what he saw. Going from being a regular kid living in the village or township to all of a sudden there's a civil war, and there's a weapon thrown in your hands, and you're fighting and you're killing and you're surviving. The bodies, the death around him, the fear, the trauma, all that stuff he dealt with. He experienced. I don't know. I can't say he dealt with it, but he experienced it, and that experience, you know, that trauma from the experience stayed with him. And at the time of my early childhood, I hadn't. I mean, I was too young, and didn't have and wouldn't have known any of that. I just knew my father was mean. I just knew my father was someone to be feared. I knew my father was someone that that flew off the handle at the heart of like literally at the heart of a beat, the beat of a heart. I'm mixing the words. At the beat of a heart, he would fly off the handles, and sometimes it didn't make any sense. He would have this look in his eyes, and you'd just be like, what's going on here?" Um, Words like PTSD was not a thing. Um, Even the word trauma was not a thing. And it's funny how I spent a good chunk of my adulthood in education, you know, trying to be trauma informed, trying to understand what's happening with our kids in the classroom, and not really understanding that I had my own trauma to address. Um, and it's difficult, when you go through that, and then you go through your life into an adulthood, not understanding that's something that's part of your identity. But as God would have it, um, I really believe that that experience as a child, and there were many of them, kind of like moved me away from my original goal of becoming an attorney, and kind of placed me into the classroom, and now it's put me into the main office as a principal of a school, and several schools thus far, and working with families and children, and even sharing these stories. I've shared these stories with my students, and why have I shared this story? Because I come across a lot of young people who are going through incredible amounts of trauma, and and in their minds, something they feel like something's wrong with them. They feel like they're the only ones. Um, like for me, and I felt the same way. And I won't lie, to a certain extent, I still feel the same way. It's a constant battle to remind yourself that it's not your fault, to remind yourself, you know, to be patient and give yourself grace. Um, and I'll share this as an adult right now. There are moments, that I'm not proud of, where I flew off the handle, and I'm asking myself, what happened? Why am I so angry? What is it that didn't allow me to process the particular situation and make a better decision? And I think about it, I'm like, wow, I've seen this before. My father, you know, um, his trauma eventually became my trauma, my siblings' trauma as well. And now, as a father with two children, you know, it's a battle to not allow that trauma to continue. Um, but I believe recognizing it and talking about it and finding courage to talk about these things is very important. So why am I sharing this? Is this just about me? No, it's about you. Maybe it might not be you, but I believe it is you. There's someone out there who's watching this right now who knows exactly what I'm talking about, who knows exactly the feelings of sometimes hopelessness, sometimes fear of your own self. And then you start to reflect on your child and start to realize, man, I am a victim of things that were so out of my control that I don't even know where to start. And that's something that's very important to recognize. Um, just to be a better person, just to develop, and to hopefully not pass it on to your children or the next generation. In the classroom, I've seen that trauma. I've looked in the eyes of children. I've seen that look that my father had, where he's not even there, you know, um, because he's so lost in the pain that's never been dealt with, that he just reacts. And often we look at our children, we say, oh, they have behavioral issues, or we say, oh, they can't act right, or this one out here is out of control, and we get angry and we admonish our students, or we call parents and we pour on them a certain level of disdain. Like, why can't you control your children? But at the same time, parents themselves, you know, reach out to us. And they don't reach out; they respond to us by saying, "That's your job, right? When a child is in your school, do your job and deal with them." And it's funny because then we have this cycle of trauma, because people, the saying, hurt people. People who've been traumatized traumatize other people, and that's something that needs to be recognized, and it's something that I know I need to recognize in myself, um, and it's just very important as educators that we're recognizing that often our children, most of the time, children are behaving in certain ways that are a result of trauma, and often it's generational. You know, parents get pour into their children how they were raised and what they experienced. Grandparents do the same thing. Great grandparents do the same thing, and become generational. It just becomes a habit. It becomes a cultural, a societal habit. And for us to break that, we need to have those deeper conversations, and we need to really, explore mental health services, and reach out to culturally responsive therapists who can help us deal with what we've dealt with. You know, um, this is hard for me to talk about, and I hope I'm not. I know I'm not the only one who has gone through what I've gone through as a child, and is dealing with what I'm dealing with as an adult, because it never goes away. You always have to remind yourself, and there's a lot of grace to oneself. There's a lot of apologies to people that you love, because you're trying to figure out how to be better. Um, a long time ago, somebody said to me something very powerful. They said to me, "You need to learn how to parent yourself," which is kind of sad when you think about it, because the parenting you have come from our parents, but because of maybe what they went through and them not being parented, so you have generations of people who've just not been parented; they've just been reacted to, and then we have what's happening in society in general. Um, but yeah, let's recognize um, trauma and the impact it has on all of us. And in the classroom, let's be more understanding. Let's dig deeper to help our children and even help their parents be better. Because at the end of the day, um, we have this one life to live, and the goal is to live it as best as we can. And yeah, that's the goal, to live it as best as we can. Thank you so much. This is hard. This is really, really hard for me to talk about. But Mohammed, thank you so much for asking me to do this, and I'm going to do more of this, because I think um, you get to see why I am who I am, why I do what I do, and also learn, and hopefully learn from the challenges that I face. I faced as a child, as a young adult, and even now as a middle aged man, um, and a seasoned school leader. That nothing is ever perfect. We're all a work in progress. So, yeah. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you all soon. All right. Be well.